with 5 meetings remaining in our 113th year. Welcome, San Diego Rotary Club 33 members, our honored guests, and those watching on Zoom to the 33rd oldest, the 10th largest, and the first best Rotary Club in the world. And now for our chair of the day, it's Sandy Purdon from the class of 1997. You know Sandy is the founder of the Port of San Diego Big Bay Boom, the July 4th fireworks show since 2001 to benefit the Armed Services YMCA and our military families. Sandy owns Shelter Cove Marina on Shelter Island. He was an active duty Marine from 1963 to 1971, going from private to captain in 9 years, including 3 years earning a degree in Aerospace Engineering from Auburn University. He served 13 months in the Vietnam War. He was the executive director of Dennis Conner's America's Cup team when the team won the Cup in 1987. Sandy sailed by himself from San Diego to Honolulu, Hawaii in 1987, 17 days alone on a 46-foot sailboat to raise $300,000 for charity. Sandy was a Commodore of the San Diego Yacht Club in 1991. He's married to Kathy and has a married daughter, and he and Kathy live in Point Loma. But I've got a story I need to add about our beloved Sandy Purdon. His father, Eric, trained and skippered the first all-black crew in the U.S. Navy in 1944 on a submarine chaser. His only black officer, Sam Gravely, became the first black admiral in the U.S. Navy. His book, Black Company, which Sandy gave to me several years ago, has a passage in here I'd like to read to all. Black Company is the true story of a naval experiment conducted during World War II. This experiment did not test equipment or weapons of war. Rather, it was designed to test the ability of a group of African Americans to live, fight, and survive under wartime conditions on a small U.S. Navy sub-chaser. It gave these men the opportunity to disprove the opinions of high-ranking naval officers, opinions shared at that time by most Americans, that African Americans could not become able seamen, what African Americans could not take orders from each other, and that whites would not take orders from African Americans in positions of authority. I highly recommend, I'm sure Sandy got a few of these books laying around, if you'd like to read it yourself, but there's some powerful information here that goes back historically and all traces back to our chair of the day today. Let's welcome Sandy Purdon.
Okay, let's get down to business. Well, now I have the privilege and honor to introduce our guest speaker today. DJ Catlin, a Southeast San Diego native, is a passionate family man, an entrepreneur, engineer, and respected leader specializing in business development and engineering consulting. He has been recognized as a under 40 business leader and an EU-US emerging leader. With a strong passion for innovation and growth, he is the co-founder of the Equity Space Alliance, a social and capital impact space company that advocates, educates, and facilitates equitable ownership within the space industry. DJ's impressive career includes invaluable contributions to the Aerospace Research and Development at NASA, where he participated in over 50 space science flights and contributed to the mission that unveiled water on the sunlit surface of the moon. DJ also led teams dedicated to the development of Earth observation technology to combat global warming and helped pioneer NASA's inaugural distribution electrical propulsion experimental aircraft. ushering in more sustainable approaches to aeronautical transportation. Beyond NASA, he has proven himself as a passionate entrepreneur, successfully founding, advising, and nurturing impactful companies. His influence extends to advising the Biden-Harris administration on strategies to support small, minority-owned businesses and initiatives of the White House and National Space Council. Let's all give DJ a warm Rotary welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy, for that great introduction. It was amazing hearing about the contributions your father did. Thank you for your service as well as his service. Again, thank you for the Rotary Club for having me here today. It's an honor and privilege to be able to come and speak to you all, and Michael Bunker for inviting me. I really appreciate it. So today I'm here to talk to you all about space, the last frontier, and the work that my organization is doing to bridge the gap. So my co-founder and I, Janae Griffin, first met at NASA and actually got back together in grad school and set out on this mission to make sure that the future of space is equitable. Now, a lot of people I know can't really understand the why or what that means, so we're going to get a bit into that. So just a bit about me. I know that, thank you again, Sandy, for that great introduction. I am a Southeast San Diego native. I actually grew up on 45th Street, less than a block away, or about a block away from the Jackie Robinson YMCA. So Mr. Bunker here was an idol actually in our community. I was actually one of those kids that was sneaking in the back. So I actually learned to swim at the YMCA, and my grandfather was baptized there. So I mean, the work that you did really meant a lot to me coming up as a kid. But I grew up in a household raised by a single mother, and my father was incarcerated. So there wasn't, in Southeast, there wasn't a lot of things to inspire to be at that time. There was not a lot of positivity going on in our neighborhood. Our getaway was literally the Jackie Robinson YMCA. And I went on to now co-found this and be the CEO of the Equity Space Alliance and speak at the White House on the National Space Council, or advise the National Space Council as well as the Department of Commerce. I served, before NASA actually, I served 6 years in the Air Force. I'm an Air Force vet. 10 years, and then went on to NASA to work at NASA for 10 years. I'll talk a bit more about my work at NASA on the next slide. I finished off at NASA after getting my master's in global management from Thunderbird School of Global Management with the emphasis in space leadership, business, and policy. It was the first ever program there surrounding the business of space. So we call ourselves Space Birds instead of T-Birds. Bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the University of Antelope Valley. Before then, I studied applied physics at Morehouse College. Certified in venture finance from UC Berkeley, and then, as mentioned earlier, I was part of the team that helped discover water on the moon, which is one of my claim to fame. I love talking about it. So just a bit about my experience at NASA, my time at NASA. So let me backtrack a bit. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Southeast San Diego, where we didn't have a lot of things to inspire us. And it wasn't until I actually went to the Pro School at UCSD, was part of the first class there, that I found the thing that changed my life, or I discovered the thing that changed my life. I remember sitting in class and listening to the teacher speak, and all of a sudden this thing interrupted the class, and I just heard this loud, I thought to myself, what was that? And she apologized, and she said, well, we're near the Miramar Air Station, and so that's going to happen frequently. So I knew I had to go and tell my grandfather that I wanted to see what that was. My grandfather took me to the Miramar Air Show, and it was at that point that I fell in love with planes. I fell in love with aerospace. I wanted everything to do with aerospace. I wanted to fly planes. I wanted to build my own plane. I wanted to jump out of planes. I wanted to fix planes. I wanted everything to do with planes. So that's what I set out to do. And from that point on, it was actually that passion for aerospace and eventually space that helped me overcome the hardest challenges in life, overcome obstacles and setbacks, major setbacks that I had in my own life. I knew that one day I had to work for NASA, and I had to do all these things that I was passionate about. And I was able to do it. I was able to accomplish that at 24 years old, I believe, I started working at NASA. And I exceeded, or I did well quickly. I worked on great programs, as mentioned earlier. I wanted to work on the X-plane, so I actually had the opportunity to work on NASA's first manned experimental plane since the 1990s, the X-57, and lead that program. I had over 50 flights on SOFIA, the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, which essentially is a 747 with a huge telescope in the back the size of Hubble. And on SOFIA, we were able to understand or research the earlier points, or the earliest points in our universe, to understand the Big Bang. And it was on that platform where I also was part of the team that discovered water on the sunlit side of the moon, which is very important, which is a very important theme for the next topic. So again, I had a great career at NASA. I loved it. I made my way up the ranks to management, but then something happened. I realized that, there was something else calling me, something else I needed to do. And I got that something came to me while I was at the Thunderbird School of Global Management and was introduced to commercial space, the next frontier. I realized that a new road is happening, and I really thought to myself at that point, how will this new road look? Who is going to have ownership? Are we going to recreate the problems we have here on Earth? And so I started asking myself those questions, and it led me into the next portion of my life. So we hear about everything going on in space, right? Elon is sending another rocket up. I don't know what's going on with that, but this is actually very important. It's it's actually changing the world as we know it. It's not just about billionaires going to space. It's not just about people going for tourism. What Elon is doing, or has done, is very disruptive. Back in the space shuttle days, it used to cost us over $51,000 to send 1 kilogram into space. $51,000 to send one payload that only weighs 2.2 pounds into space. Well, at that time, it only would make sense for the government to play in space. I mean, that's definitely not a very economical business model, right? It's not. So we didn't see a lot of private commercial companies getting into space. But now, after the innovations that SpaceX has done, it currently costs us about $1,500 to send that 1 kilogram into space. And once Starship is up and flying, it will only cost us about $200 to send 1 kilogram into space. So now space is more accessible. Now companies can find business models around using space. And what we're seeing now actually is high schools are putting satellites into space, CubeSats into space, and doing great things in space. This was a game changer. This is a game changer. Not only that, our government said, it's not too bad, that we are going back to the moon. But not only are we going back to the moon, we are going back to settle on the moon. This time we won't go just to plant a flag, but we're going to go to create research facilities and actually have people live on the moon. And we're going to do it by 2030. Very ambitious. So, of course, for me, this is exciting. This is the new frontier. Star Trek is finally here. We're going to go to the moon, and then Mars, and then deep space, and all facilitated, by the way, by the water that we found on the moon. Because of that water on the moon, now we have an oxygen source. We also have a hydrogen source so that we can use that as fuel to get on and off the lunar surface, into Mars and back to Earth. And it's important to go back to the moon because, it's another important resource on the moon is this thing called H3. And H3 is a very disruptive energy source that could provide clean energy to Earth. 25 tons of H3 could power the United States for a year, and we can fit 25 tons in one space shuttle. So it's something that's very achievable that is going to be very disruptive. So with this, if we're going to live on the moon, we need to have an ecosystem around living on the moon. So with that, a lot of technologies need to be developed. We need companies to develop those technologies. And guess what? The government will pay for those technologies to be developed and then for these companies to commercialize these technologies. So this creates a very financially feasible business model for a lot of startups. And we're seeing the space industry blow up as we speak. And some of those things that we're seeing in the space industry currently are new space stations. So our International Space Station will be retired in 2031. And we're seeing 5 private companies putting up new space stations so that we can do research in space. We're seeing things like space-based solar power. huge solar power arrays that will send power back, or energy back to the Earth. Not just that, there's also fun things going on in space hotels. So I know we see tourists going to space and coming back, but imagine going up into space, staying in a resort, and looking down and seeing Earth every day. Like, imagine that. So there's opportunities across the entire spectrum when it comes to space. There's space mining. There's a lot of things going on. So this is a huge industry blowing up. Actually, it's estimated to be growing at a compound annual growth rate of over 16%, reaching $2 trillion in market cap by 2030 and exceeding $3 trillion in 30 years. I think these numbers have been accelerated since this report came out. Being in my university program, I became one of the leaders in the industry with this information. So I went around telling different conferences about the opportunities happening in space. But what I quickly realized is that when I went into these rooms were all homogenous. They weren't diverse at all. So what was happening is another power grab, more wealth was being created, and it was going to lie within one small community. So I asked myself, and actually my co-founder and I came together and said, what systems can we implement to ensure industry ownership is equitable in the future? So we decided to found an organization called the Equity Space Alliance. So the Equity Space Alliance, as mentioned earlier, is a social and capital impact company committed to bridging the gap between resources and historically excluded communities to increase their success within the space industry, or the space economy. We advocate, educate, and facilitate access to the resources needed to enter the space industry, ensuring that the space economy becomes a place where everyone has ownership and access. So eventually we decided to break this mission into two sections. One, a for-profit, and another, a nonprofit. So I'm going to focus on the for-profit work that we're doing first. So the for-profit work focuses on providing resources to founders in universities to create technologies and focuses on business development. We do that by 4 different verticals. One is our venture studio model. We work with solopreneurs and ask some of our team members to their team so that they can help develop their technologies and grow their companies. Secondly, we actually work with HBCUs and minority-serving institutions on their research and development capabilities and managing their tech development when they're working with the U.S. government and all other large companies or primes. We have business accelerators, so we work with the Canadian Space Agency, the Luxembourg Space Agency, Arizona State University's New Space Program to create accelerators where founders could quickly raise capital for their company, position themselves to raise capital for their company. One of the main things that we're working on now was a request from the White House. The National Space Council, Kamala Harris herself, actually came to us and said that we want to see more HBCUs and minority-serving institutions doing federal contracting. Currently, NASA has a goal of 1% of all federal contracts to go to HBCUs, and they're having a hard time reaching that goal. So I decided to take the lead on this initiative and understand the pain points that these organizations are experiencing and come up with a solution. So we put together a panel at the White House that works with large primes like your Boeings and SpaceX's, and HBCUs as well as government agencies to try to understand the problem and put together a resource that can be a solution. And then our solution is Space Tech Connect. It's a SaaS platform that facilitates teaming. I think I have some stuff on here. Yes, that facilitates teaming within the universities so that we understand where their capabilities lie within these universities and understand how they can carry out the work that these government agencies and primes need to accomplish. So that's currently, and actually that has been very successful. Kamala Harris just announced it a few months ago, actually, in April, about this new platform called Space Tech Connect, and as well as this new consortium called the Executive HBCU Space Lab, in which we're helping facilitate those organizations to go after space contracts and develop space technology. So next, the nonprofit sector, the nonprofit portion, the Equity Space Alliance Association. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for educating and empowering historically excluded communities, aiming to enhance their participation in the new space economy. So this nonprofit organization focuses on, again, advocating and educating. So we do a lot of STEM outreach, and we voice inclusion in the space industry on Capitol Hill as well as in the executive branch. Currently, our big initiatives are a sponsored research program in which we're actually going to have a commercial astronaut go up and give the students the opportunity to collect data while she's in space so that we can better understand the physiological effects that spaceflight has on women. Because up until now, most of the infrastructure in the programs have been built heavily around men. So we want to better understand how space affects women, the challenges that they face, so that we can make sure that spaceflight also is comfortable for them. Also, about that one quick thing. One thing that we also noticed is that there's an organization called Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. It's a very prominent organization that we see at a lot of universities, but what we found is that this organization that promotes space to students is only present at one HBCU, and that is FAMU, or Florida A&M. So so part of this program is to increase the outreach of SEDS, and so we're working with them to do that. And finally, we have a program led by my co-founder, Janaea Griffin, who is not an engineer, a scientist, or an astronaut, about showing that space is for everyone, for every genius type. She has a TEDx talk about her experience of getting into the space industry, not being from those traditional backgrounds, and how it is for everyone. We're teaming up with TEDx Inglewood, and we're having a TEDx event during National Space Week in October, and we'll have speakers from the NFL who are now in the space industry, artists who are now in the space industry, from all different background types, talking about their stories and how they got into space and how they're adding value to space as well as getting value from the space industry. This is going to be a fun event. We're going to have STEAM activities, and we're even going to have a competition for a zero-G flight. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's really the scope of the work that we're doing right now. We're very excited about what's going on in space, and I'm looking forward to hearing questions. Thank you all for being a great audience to me, and yeah, thank you. A pleasure to be here.
Thanks, DJ. We have time for some questions.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. With the cost logarithmically diminishing for the cost of sending things up to space, I would imagine there'd be a logarithmic growth in debris.
Yes.
Has the ESA considered how to get dumpsters up to space?
That is a great question. I love that question. So, of course, once we go to space, we want to learn from the lessons that we've learned here on Earth, and that is don't pollute the environment, right? Take care of the environment. And actually, since the 60s, there has been a problem with space debris. Governments have sent up things into orbit and in an irresponsible manner, which has caused collisions in populated space, which also threatens human life. We've seen these threats put our astronauts in the ISS at risk as well. So we are looking at programs to do that. Actually, the first company that our organization had the pleasure to work with was a company called Patterson Aerospace, and they are looking at ways to improve space debris tracking. And one other thing that is really happening right now in space is ways to clean up that space debris. So the government is paying organizations to find solutions to space debris. There's currently policies that if you send something into space, it has to be deorbited or has to have the capability to be deorbited. But currently, only our nation follows those rules, and we're seeing rocket bodies falling from the sky from the Chinese nations and other nations. But yes, it's a real problem. There's a lot of people looking at ways to address that, and there's a lot of funding. If you have an idea, the government is very interested in paying for that idea to come into fruition. It's not really a good business model yet, though, but we'll figure it out.
Hey, DJ. I'm Logan, and I just want to say thank you for your contributions to NASA. Hearing about Earth observation was awesome because currently looking at Earth observation data myself, just messing around with it. I did want to ask, you mentioned there's some roadblocks with getting federal grants to HBCUs. Could you expand on those roadblocks a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's federal contracts. They're actually really good at getting grants. But the thing about federal contracts is that you need someone to manage the contract throughout the entire contract cycle, the life cycle. And a lot of that is the compliance. And these universities, they usually don't have a business office. So they're university staff members that are trying to manage the contract throughout the life cycle, and their expertise is not program management or contract management. So they have a problem delivering when expected on the scope of work. So that's their main challenge. I mean, they are able to apply for contracts or federal contracts, but they have a problem when awarded the contract with delivering, essentially. So, and there's one other challenge, it's capabilities. The government as well as primes or big companies, they don't know where the capabilities lie at HBCUs. Their capability statements aren't as mature. So if a company's looking for a wind tunnel, they don't know where to look. So we're trying to help solve that problem as well.
Okay, DJ, this is such a fascinating topic, and you've got my mind blowing. So I can imagine that you're up there, but you know, the moon is a pretty big piece of real estate. And while you are having these plans to do this, there are other countries that are making their plans. There's China, there's Iran, yes. There's India. What happens when you all get up there at the same time?
This is a great question that that everyone is talking about. These are questions that are happening at the UN. So one thing is that historically, we had this thing called the Outer Space Treaty. The Outer Space Treaty was a result of the Apollo years, and it essentially said that no one can own space. You can't own anything in space. But what the government believes, or what people in the government believe, in the US government, is that when some of our adversaries go to space, well, some of them already said that we're not going to acknowledge the OST anymore. But furthermore, when they get there, we fear that they will start claiming the moon like we see in the South Pacific. They'll start, creating new territories and saying and laying claim to it because they're first. So currently we have an agreement of 40 nations, I think 39 nations, including us, have agreements called the Artemis Accords. And the Artemis Accords essentially is laying a new foundation to, I would say, supplement the OST. The thing about the Artemis Accords, though, is although it does not. So the OST says we can't own space. The Artemis Accord says that if I'm there and I'm operating as a space mining company, I can have a keep-out zone. So that keep-out zone is essentially, my area of ownership. So that's one issue we're having is how do we, if we have companies going there, how do we protect the companies and how do they have the rights? Because they're spending billions of dollars to get there to get these resources. So how do we make sure that they can have a claim to it and someone won't take it? But other things is governance. What does a government look like in space? We've seen when settlers came to the Americas how they broke away from Great Britain, right? So what does it look like when we have settlements on the moon? Will we have these same type of civil uprisings, or will the people there not get along? I think one good indication though is that on the ISS, the astronauts, regardless of where they're from, they get along way better than we do here on Earth. We see cosmonauts loving our astronauts up there. So I think that's one positive historical data point that we can look forward to.
Hi, DJ. So SpaceX has really stepped up and really driven us forward in terms of reducing the cost of payloads to space. And that's opening up so much of what you're talking about in terms of opportunities in space, business opportunities. I'm curious, are we seeing other commercial companies willing to start to step in? Because that's kind of the big infrastructure piece of it is the rocket ships to get there. Are we seeing any other companies and people funding companies to step into that space also? Yes, actually what we're seeing now is that the launch industry is becoming a red ocean. It's very saturated. There's organizations like Rocket Lab, which is a U.S. company now, but they're from New Zealand, who is also a close competitor. We have the United Launch Alliance also, which is a partnership between Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Boeing has their own space launch vehicle. So there's a lot of different companies that are competitors to SpaceX. While none of them are really doing what SpaceX can do, we are seeing a lot of people getting into the industry and grabbing a piece of the market.
Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. So I don't know what the U.S. Space Force does, but are there opportunities for your initiatives to collaborate with them?
Yes, so the U.S. Space Force was an organization, or is an organization that was made to protect us in that new domain. So protect us in the space domain as well as on Mars and beyond that. Currently this U.S. Space Force actually gives a lot of funding for startups looking to help them solve their problems. So there's organizations called like SpaceWorks, which is their version of an accelerator or a startup organization. And they provide SBIR, STTR grant funding through the government for space technology development. So the DoD actually is the largest funder right now when it comes to space development, not NASA. So yes, absolutely.
This will be a Black history information, okay? Does anybody know who the first Black man who graduated from NASA's?
Ed. Yes, Ed.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Who is it?
Ed Wright.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so he just went to space, right? Yes.
Yeah, he just went into space.
Yeah.
He built my great-grandfather's Underground Railroad monument, which is now a national monument. So he did very good for himself.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for a great presentation. Since I know nothing, how much water is there on the moon? And will we run out of it quickly, or does it renew itself?
No, there's a lot of water on the moon. I don't know the definite number, but there is abundance of water on the moon. And most of it is inside craters where the sun doesn't really touch. But we do have water as well under the surface on the sunlit side of the moon. There's a lot of water on the moon.
Somebody's building a pipeline there next week. DJ, great presentation. Curious of your funding sources. Where are you getting funding to start your nonprofit and continue operations?
Yeah, so currently, funding is always a challenge, right? But we have received a NASA grant to get us started, and we are going after federal contracting. Our model right now is we're trying to remove any barriers to entry for our customers. So we don't want to charge our customers. We want to also tap into that government source so that they can develop without having that cost barrier. So even our SaaS platform that we're releasing, it's going to be free. And that's intentional because we understand that once we charge the HBCU or the Prime, the Boeing, it creates a reason for them not to use the platform and not to move the needle. So we are looking at different grants and contracts and things like that for our funding currently.
Hi, DJ. Chris Titchell. You talked a little bit or a lot about, kind of the lack of diversity in the industry. Can you talk a little bit, or maybe you've seen some successes in getting that next generation of kids who aren't typically seen or represented in that industry excited about it and actually seeing a path?
Yeah, so it's not even just America has another problem right now. And the problem is when we look at people on the other side of the world, their students are still excited about being engineers and scientists. Most of our children, 8 years old, 9 years old, they want to be YouTube influencers. So when we think about this growing industry, we think about what does the workforce of tomorrow look like. So there are organizations, including mine, that is looking to take on that challenge. It's actually one of the initiatives of the National Space Council is to prepare for the workforce of the future. So what we're doing is we're trying to do more outreach. We're doing things like the fun TEDx event and trying to find different ways to reach them. We understand that when we talk about NASA TV, right? NASA TV is for the people in the industry. Nobody else watches NASA TV. So we're trying to find ways to reach the youth, and we do that by, influence or social media, but we also host events. I have a friend of mine who has an organization called Space Prize, and what she does is she travels the world actually to get young girls to be in space and study STEM. So there's a lot of smaller initiatives going on, but we haven't done it nearly enough yet to prepare for the future.
Thank you. Chris essentially asked my same question, but I just wanted to tell you, as a kid growing up, I remember my Halloween costume one time was an astronaut, and our heroes were astronauts. And I just want to thank you because I think you are going to be our hero. You are our hero.
Thank you.
And if you can spread that through our society, that would be a wonderful thing for all of us. And I thank you.
We have a few more questions. I'm just headed to the back.
Hi, that was a wonderful presentation. Question I have, and it relates to what Chris was saying. Have you made a connection with the San Diego Girl Scouts? Because we have so many girls that are so interested in STEM, and space is where we want to go.
So yes, my wife is actually, she has her own troop, so. She doesn't actually invite me to speak, though. I don't know why. In Southeast San Diego. So her troop is actually, they meet at Valencia Park Elementary School. And she used to work for the Girl Scouts of America here in San Diego. But now she just manages her own troop. But and if please, I am very interested in speaking at any other troops. Love to. Okay.
Hi. I'd like to follow up with this line of questioning. We talk about the STEM disciplines and encouraging women and men to be in the STEM disciplines. You mentioned that you were collaborating in arts with artists. What do you see for the role of the arts in the future?
A lot. So I can talk on both sides. I can talk with different ways different uses of space that we can use to create new arts. So in a zero-G, in a zero-G environment, what could a painter do with that? The way that sound waves move through space is different, right? There is no oxygen, there's no air. So what other ways, how can we use these environments to create new sounds, new arts, and things like that? It provides a different medium to create. So with that new medium, we want to hear what artists, the ideas they have to create with it.
Thanks, DJ. We have time for one last question.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really wonderful. While we're talking about places for you to come to inspire kids, I think you said that you're a graduate of the Preuss School.
Yes.
I happen to be the chairman of the board at the Preuss School, and I would love to have you come.
I would love to speak. I actually didn't graduate there, but I did. I attended the Preuss School for 3 years, so I definitely would love it, and I definitely would come and speak. I'll be honored to.
Well, I'll start by saying, DJ, you have just set the record for the most questions asked by San Diego Rotary Club 33, right? But what a topic, and let's be honest, how many of us at one time in our lives thought we were going to be an aerospace engineer or go to the moon or be an astronaut or go to NASA in any capacity, right? And you did it. You've done it, and we've heard about it here today. What I really appreciate about what DJ said today is there's a general task of leadership, and it's sometimes bring an unwelcome reality to an individual, an organization, an institution, a community, and come up with a solution. And oftentimes we heard today in this presentation, he was pretty blunt about things that weren't going well, right? That they're not doing it the right way. It's not how to do it, but everything you did really adheres to that four-way test right behind us. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? And we're talking about getting off this earth and going places. And he's ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve. I want to salute you for that. So DJ, Gordon McAnally's Rotary International theme is create hope in the world. And my goodness, have you given us hope today? Because it is bigger than this. When you ask the question about art, and Susie Spafford, you know all about art, imagine the perspective of looking down on the earth and drawing that. I mean, we know how infatuated we get when we just see those pictures, and you've been up there, and you've seen, you've been up there. He's seen those pictures. He knows what that's all about. So may this coin serve as a reminder of the hope that you shared with our club here today. And what I'd like to do is, my goal this year is to reimagine how we create future leaders like DJ, all right? self-leaders that can really make these kind of decisions. And what a tribute to he knew that first astronaut, that first black astronaut, right? There wasn't any hesitation. He didn't have to think about it, but he also paid homage to the Jackie Robinson YMCA, where he lived a block away. And that's important about remembering where you came from, because where you're going, literally the sky's the limit. So on behalf of the Blanchard Institute, we'd like to contribute in your name to the high school or high schools of your choice, student self-leadership, to any school that you choose, so that we can help further develop young leaders. And maybe one day, they're going to grow up to be just like DJ, all right? This is for you. And now let's welcome a dedicated member of our CADES, our IDEA, our Model UN, our Peace, our Project Allocation, and our Rotary Cares committees and Strategic Plan Task Force. She's from the class of 1993. Dr. Mary Colachico will give us today's 30-second parting message and then ring the bell to adjourn the 44th meeting of our 113th year. Please welcome Mary.
I want to share something with you. It was my honor last week to represent Club 33 at the Hoover High School Scholarship Presentation Assembly. And I was there because Club 33, through the CADES Scholarship Fund, presented 6 amazing young men and women with $1,000 scholarships so they can begin to take the preliminary steps to go to the college of their choice. It was an amazing event, and the interview process was amazing as well. The scholarship, for those of you who may not know, honors 2 Rotarians, Craig Blower and Dr. Doug Arbon, and it was established to support the STEM activities, as we were talking about, at Hoover High School. And just as DJ encouraged us to do, I think our scholarships do the same thing. On a personal note, I want to share with you that I had never been involved with Hoover High School, or any high school for that matter, for many, many, many years since I taught, which was in the last century. So this was a great and new experience for me. And I just encourage all of you to think about what committees you're on. Maybe you want to do a new committee, stretch yourself, whatever, because it was a very exciting and moving experience for me. And I think many of you could have that same experience that I'd like to share. Thank you.